We are here at Roger Williams Park at the Roosevelt Pond Stormwater Site, BMP. This site was constructed with the removal of a very large roadway, so a lot of impervious surface was taken off and permeable areas were provided in its place. The pre-treatment here is the grass itself, so there's a large area of slopes and hills that come to this area, which is low-lying in the immediate surrounding areas. So the sediment is not an issue here because there's no real roadway that transports that sediment. So the grass areas provide any sediment removal required. It comes down, there's areas that cross underneath the roadway with a culvert. With any pipe, debris can build up in there. We have a large grass area, so typically it doesn't, but you want to make sure that those pipes are free and the water's flowing freely. And then it enters this rain garden, which is the only rain garden in the park, and this is one of the older stormwater sites. This was, I believe, the first site that was constructed here in Roger Williams Park. So complete contaminant removal with plant material, as most rain gardens do. Not a concern for sediment removal here. Mainly contaminant removal is what we're looking for with this BMP, and it does it very well. Some of the maintenance required here is intensive, labor intensive, because we're removing invasives. We're keeping the bay floor free of debris so that the water can make its way easily through the rain garden in larger events and doesn't back up to areas where we don't want it. But eventually this will make its way into the groundwater clean and into our ponds.
I'm Freitas, and I am the director of the Roger Williams Park Botanical Center here. Today we are going to look at some of the diversity of plant material that we have here and look at how we maintain a stormwater site that might not be your usual permeable paver, wear, go through, clear debris, and move on. This is a little bit more intense, so we're just going to kind of walk you through some of our annual maintenance and some of the things that you might want to look out for as you go along in the year. So here we have our stormwater site, bandstand site, and you can see there's quite a bit of diversity. Most of the sites have been planted with native plants, as that makes the most sense ecologically speaking, and it also keeps in mind that the function of stormwater is to help filter out pollutants in the water. So this is really a great way for us to do that while adding to the ecosystem of the park. We have quite a few natives here. We've got Joe Pye weed, which is seeding up, and if you can see, there is a lot of Joe Pye weed, and Joe Pye weed seeds up very regularly. So sometimes what we will do is just cut the seed heads off, bag those up and use them other places and let them go that way, because we will end up with just a straight up monoculture of Joe Pye weed because it is a little bit aggressive. It's a lovely plant. I don't want to negate its benefits, but it does tend to seed itself up readily and easily. So we have Joe Pye weed in here. We also have New England asters, which are quite lovely and really pretty and very important for late native pollinators, such as our bumblebees, our native Rhode Island bumblebees. Mason bees, sweat bees rely on late fall blooms, so these blooms are really important for that. So we like to keep those around. We also have mountain mint in here, which is also a native, really wonderful late fall bloomer. Those are plants we want. Then we, of course, always have plants that we don't want, and here is one. This is a primrose. They're not necessarily the worst. They're not an invasive species list. However, they are a nuisance and pest plant. They have a ton of seed heads. You can see this is just all filled with seeds, kind of like Joe Pye weed, but we don't necessarily want that plant because it's not native to this region. Another plant that's in here is purple loosestrife. Here in the park, what we try to do is use an integrated pest management program, and part of that is using beneficial insects. So when we come to look more closely at our plant material, we're looking to see what's here and how we're going to manage that. So our natives, we don't have to do too much for. Other plants that don't belong here, like the evening primrose and an invasive plant, we have to manage very methodically. So evening primrose is easy enough. We can just pull that without worrying about it seeding up everywhere for the most part. This, however, is a whole entire different story. So purple loosestrife is very aggressive. If I left this stem on the ground near here, it would root up. The roots send out new shoots, and then it has its seeds. So it can reproduce in 3 different ways. What we have been using is a specific beetle called Gailurusella, not Gailurusacea, Gailurusella, and you can see what I am looking for when I look at our purple loosestrife population here in this area is if any of the plants have been eaten. And you can see that this leaf has been chewed, so that is a good sign that the Gailurusella is working on control. However, if I start seeing, well, I'll take a random plot here, if I start seeing more than 4 purple loosestrife in, a 10-foot radius, I will start being a little bit more aggressive. We tend not to dig them out, but what we will do is continuously cut them back. I don't want to pull up the root system because I'm disturbing the soil, allowing those seeds that are laying dormant in the soil to seed up and make more plants. So we try to just cut them back and then bag those up in a brown trash bag, or a black trash bag, so that way they do not propagate elsewhere. Some other things that we have to always be cognizant of when you have an area that is a little bit more densely planted is keeping in mind how you thin out plants properly. And for us, I usually just stick with cutting things back. We allow most of our plant material to go dormant just as is because we're doing multiple things by doing such. If I leave most of our seed heads for Joe Pye weed, they'll have food for the birds. So we're kind of taking care of the birds. Joe Pye weed is really wonderful for caterpillars to eat. So during the summer months, we are feeding the birds protein. And then in the winter months, we're feeding them seed to get them through the longer winter period. The same thing with the mountain mint. We also have a bit of echinacea back here that does the same thing. So when we maintain, of course, for its functionality, stormwater, and then we maintain the plant material. And how you maintain your plant material may be more for aesthetic. This has a different aesthetic than if you were, in the front of a municipality or a town building or something like that. Because this is part of a natural landscape, we are able to kind of let it look more naturalized and leave it as is, so that way it's beneficial not only for stormwater, but for the larger ecosystem and park in general.
The consultant that designed this area was mainly looking at the area's immediate watershed surrounding the pond with the removal of the pavement. The Parks Department installed a riprap swale up higher on the walkway because we saw continuous erosion in a swale adjacent to the walkway. So it was retrofitted after the design was completed further away from this rain garden. With all riprap swales, we need to be vigilant in keeping the sediment out of it and removing the vegetation that grows in it. And that's our main maintenance function in the riprap swale.